Hello, and welcome back to Democracy Digest. I'm Grant Hamilton, and today we tackle a question that looms large over American politics. Is political polarization tearing America apart? In this video, I want to explore how this divide isn't just loud noise on cable news or social media. It's affecting how government works, how laws get made, and whether the people in power can actually deliver results. So let's begin with one of the most tangible consequences of polarization: how it slows down government and reduces legislative effectiveness. You might not always notice it in daily headlines, but the numbers show something worrying. Over the past few decades, Congress has passed fewer laws. In 2023, for example, the House held over 700 votes, but fewer than 30 bills were signed into law. That gap between effort and outcome is widening. Why is this happening? With party divisions growing deeper, every law that used to get broad bipartisan support is now fought over harder. The friction introduced by polarization means many good ideas never make it out of committee, or if they do, they're delayed, watered down, or bundled into bigger must-pass bills where leverage and negotiation dominate. Another measure: look at sheer productivity. The number of bills Congress passes per session has been declining steadily. It's not just a drop in quantity, and the process itself is becoming less efficient. Bills get longer, negotiations get tougher, and leaders are spending more time trying to bridge divides than pushing forward policy. What this means in practice is that urgent issues, infrastructure, healthcare costs, climate policy, are often left waiting. And when something does pass, it tends to be larger, more all or nothing, which can make it harder to find consensus. Now, with that picture in mind, I want to show how this isn't just about slow government. It's about how polarization shifts what kind of laws do get passed and who gets left out. And now, let's move on to something even closer to the way many of us live our daily lives. How political polarization erodes trust, damages our relationships, and weakens the social fabric that holds a democracy together. Think about this. When you meet someone for the first time, do you automatically assume they share your political values? Probably not. Increasingly, many Americans believe that their fellow citizens have very different beliefs, values, and priorities, which can lead to suspicion, fear, or simply withdrawing from engagement. That shrinking sense of common ground undermines something fundamental: social trust. The evidence is strong. One recent study found that as more Americans perceive the country to be deeply divided, their willingness to trust strangers or people they don't know drops measurably. Trust in most people becomes harder. And when people believe others won't act in good faith, won't do what is right, won't respect norms, they're less likely to cooperate, less likely to contribute to shared goals. This isn't abstract. It shows up in everyday life. Neighbors stop talking. People avoid discussing politics even with friends. Communities get fractured. When we mistrust fellow citizens, it becomes harder to organize around public projects, like improving schools, fixing roads, planning responses to emergencies, or even simple acts of civility. Another dimension: health and well-being suffer when trust is low. Americans with lower levels of social trust report more isolation, more stress, and in some cases, worse mental health outcomes. Calls to action, public health measures, crisis response lose effectiveness. People feel disconnected, less invested in the idea of the public good. So polarization doesn't just mean louder arguments online or more intense media battles. It reaches into how people see each other, how they act toward each other, and that shift in trust can cost a democracy dearly. Coming up next, how structural and systemic forces, things like media, identity, and inequality, feed polarization in ways that make these trust breakdowns even harder to reverse. And now, let's turn to the structural and systemic forces behind polarization. How things like media, identity, and inequality don't just reflect divisions, but actually feed them and make them harder to fix. First, the media ecosystem. Algorithms and social media platforms often serve content that reinforces what we already believe. When you keep seeing posts or articles that agree with your views, without being exposed to other perspectives, it magnifies bias. Over time, echo chambers form, spaces where people hear only what they expect, which deepens division and suspicion toward anyone outside their bubble. Then there's identity and emotion. Many of the most heated political debates today aren't just about policies. They're about identity, race, religion, culture, beliefs about what America is or should be. When people feel their identity is under threat, or that their values are not respected, the argument isn't just what law we should pass. It becomes who we are and who gets to belong. This shifts politics from debate to conflict, from negotiation to feeling that one side is us and the other side is fundamentally opposed or even inimical. Finally, economic inequality plays a powerful role. When there's a large gap between the wealthy and the rest, people begin to feel left behind. They may believe that the political and economic system no longer works for them, or that power is concentrated in the hands of elites. That sense of unfairness erodes trust in institutions, fuels resentment, and makes people more willing to embrace polarizing or radical ideas. Inequality thus doesn't just worsen existing divisions, it creates fertile ground for new ones. So putting all that together, echo chambers, identity-polarized feelings, and inequality combine to push the country toward more entrenched, emotional, and systemic polarization. Up next, I'll explore what this means for what hope remains. Can America heal? And if so, how? And so, what does all this add up to? Polarization isn't just messy rhetoric or shouting matches on TV. It's reshaping institutions, eroding trust, slowing government, and sharpening divides in ways that are hard to reverse. But that doesn't mean things are hopeless. There are paths forward, some already being walked, some just emerging. We can begin to heal America in ways big and small. For example, there are programs and organizations bringing together people from across the political spectrum in structured dialogue, spaces where people listen, share, and find shared values, instead of just battling for wins. There's evidence that even when ideological differences remain, effective polarization, how strongly people dislike or fear the other side, can be reduced if folks realize they agree on more than they think, or if they're encouraged to understand others' perspectives. Another lever is media and online environments. If platforms, journalists, and creators can shift away from content that amplifies division just to drive clicks or outrage, if they prioritize nuance, empathy, accurate portrayals, and reducing misperceptions, this can help. Also, electoral and structural reform matters. Systems that reward extremism over moderation, or that incentivize partisan over bipartisanship, make polarization worse. At Democracy Digest, we believe democracy doesn't thrive on division. It thrives on engagement, understanding, and shared purpose. And that's where you come in. If you've stayed with me so far, here's what you can do next. Share this video with someone who holds different political views than you. It might be uncomfortable, but conversation starts by listening. In your online spaces, pause before reacting when you see polarizing content. Ask, is this helping or hurting the divide? Consider seeking sources that try to bridge rather than inflame. Comment below. What's one thing you believe we as citizens could do to reduce polarization? I want to hear your ideas, which might spark real action. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss upcoming videos. We have more in store on how polarization shows up in court decisions, in local governments, and what models from abroad might teach the U.S. Thanks for watching Democracy Digest. I'm Grant Hamilton. See you next time.